Hello everybody, and welcome back to another exciting edition of Ed Puzzle Lecture Notes. Today we're going to continue on in population ecology, and the first thing we're going to go over is something called exponential growth. Now, the main thing you need to know about this is that it is a very rapid or fast increase in population. Now I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to ask you this question. If I could give you a check for $3 million right now, or I can give you 1 cent. But tomorrow, I'll give you 2 cents. And I'll keep doubling the amount of money you get for 31 days. Which one would you guys take? Would you take the $3 million, or would you take a penny on the first day, 2 pennies on the second day, 4 pennies, 8 pennies, etc.? Answer that question. Which one would you take? Alright, well, I don't know what you guys chose, but if you chose the penny, 2 pennies, 4 pennies route, after week 1, you wouldn't be very happy because I'll give you 64 cents at the end of the week. At the end of week 2, I'll give you $81.92. At the end of week 3, now you're going to start getting some money, $10,485. At the end of week 4, I'm going to give you $1,342,177. And on the 31st day of the month, I'm going to write you a check for $10,737,418. So what you need to know, exponential growth. As the population gets bigger, the population will start to grow at an even higher rate as it gets bigger. And if you graphed it, it would look like this. It would start out pretty slow. First week you got 64 cents. That's pretty slow. Week 2 you got $81.92. That's pretty slow. But once it starts going up, once the amount of money gets very large, then it just goes out of control. And that's basically what exponential growth is. And if you graphed it, it looks kind of like a J. And that's why they call it a J-shaped curve. And here's just a little graph of the J curve, or the exponential curve. So you can see rabbits here. Generation 1, you have 100. Generation 2, 105, so it didn't go up much. Generation 72, 3,000. And generation 100, you get 13,000. So it starts out slow, but once the numbers start to increase, it goes up exponentially. It goes up very, very rapidly. I know that doesn't look exactly like a J, but it kind of looks like a J. So that's the exponential curve. All right, a couple little terms you guys need to know. Biotic potential. That is the amount of organisms that can be produced if all the offspring survive and all of them reproduce at a maximum rate or maximum capacity. Now, obviously, this never happens because in the real world, there's things called limiting factors. In the real world, not everything lives, and not everything reproduces at maximum capacity. For example, if you had 2 bacteria at the start of the day, at the end of the day, I don't know what this number is, but you'd have 4.72 whatever. Gazillion, quadrillion, bazillion. I don't know what that number is, but that's after 1 day. But that wouldn't happen because a lot of those bacteria would die. Some of them would just be bad bacteria and they would die right off the beginning. So you would never have this many bacteria after 1 day. But if it did happen, that would be the bacteria's biotic potential. That is their potential. That's the most amount of babies or offspring they could produce. And now, like I said, the reason why this doesn't happen, the reason why nothing ever reaches its biotic potential is because there's things called limiting factors. This is extremely important. Definitely write this down in your notes. Limiting factors are any biotic, remember that's living, or abiotic, non-living, agents or factors that limit or control the size of a population. For example, here in California, we have over 30 million people. Could we have 50 or 60 million people? We have the space for 50 or 60 million people, but do we have enough water? The answer is no, we don't. Water is a huge limiting factor for people in the state of California. Also in the wild, food. There's only so much food that's available for organisms in the wild. So when you run out of food, that population cannot keep growing in size. It needs to stabilize. It cannot keep growing up and up forever. It's eventually got to stop because there's only so much food. There's only so much space. Also diseases. Diseases cause organisms to die. That is a limiting factor. Predators, another. Climate, nutrients. These are all things that limit the size of a population. So basically, anything that makes organisms die, that's a limiting factor. All right, so now a couple different types of limiting factors. Now, don't stress out about this too much. This will probably be 2 multiple choice questions on your test. Do you want to get them right? Of course. But, it's not going to be like a written question or anything. The first one's called density dependent limiting factors. Now, you guys all learned about population density. How closely compact are the organisms, like really close together, or are they spread out? So these are limiting factors which impact a community or a population more if they're close together. And those are things especially like disease, because if we've all seen it, if somebody gets the flu in one of the class, pretty much then it spreads like wildfire, everybody gets the flu. That's a density dependent limiting factor. Parasites. If you're close to somebody and he has fleas, one of those fleas might jump on you and now you have fleas. So these are things. Food, if you're compact together, you might run out of food. Water, space, soil nutrients. These are limiting factors that impact populations more if they're close together, if their population density is high. All right, and the opposite is density independent limiting factors. These are things that if they happen, it does not matter how close together or compact a population is. For example, if I'm way over here in, say, Tulare, and you're way over here in Fresno, and an asteroid hits California, both me and you are going to die, even though we're 45 miles apart. Same thing with these polar bears over here. So things like climate change. If there's excessive climate change, polar bears are reliant on this Arctic sea ice. So no matter how close together the polar bears are, if the sea ice goes away in the Arctic Circle, polar bears are going to die. So these are limiting factors that affect individuals no matter what. So that's like severe drought, fire, flood, a volcano erupts. It don't matter how close together you are. If a volcano erupts and you're hit with a bunch of ash or lava, you're going to die. So that's the difference between density independent and density dependent limiting factors. All right, we're almost done here. Look at this guy over here. He went to the supermarket and he had his little bags from Ralph's, but he put too much stuff in his bags, and his bags broke. Those bags can only hold so many things, so much weight. Though he exceeded what's called the carrying capacity. Everything has a carrying capacity. And this guy, he put too much stuff. Those bags couldn't hold everything that he wanted to put in there. Here's my fish tank. How many fish are in there? I see 1. Here's Mr. 2, the red guy. There's a starfish. There's a shrimp. But how many fish could I put in that aquarium where they would all live? There's a number. 10? Is it 10? 15? 20? I don't know. But there's a number where if I put too many fish and starfish and shrimp in there, eventually they would run out of food, they would run out of oxygen, whatever, they would start to die. And you can see it here. Obviously, yeah, I can fit that many fish in that little bowl, but all those fish are going to die because that's exceeded the carrying capacity. These guys will be just fine. They'll have enough food, they'll have enough oxygen, because fish, they need to breathe oxygen. They breathe it right out of the water. So carrying capacity is the amount of organisms that an environment can hold and they can still live, that they won't die. All right, and just like the slide before, carrying capacity. It's the maximum amount of individuals of a species that an environment can support, and it depends on the limiting factors like things like water and space, nutrients, sunlight, predators. There's only so many organisms that an environment can support. How many people can the Earth support? You know, the Earth's population is still going up. Eventually, that population is going to have to stop because we're going to run out of food. We're going to run out of water. Eventually, the carrying capacity of the Earth will be reached. The Earth can only carry so many people, and that is the carrying capacity. Now, if you remember with exponential growth, we had the J curve, where it starts out slow and then it just explodes, exponential growth. Well, there's something called the logistic curve, and it's very similar. But this time it starts out slow, it goes to exponential growth, but then you run out of whatever. Limiting factors cause the population to stabilize. And that is when the carrying capacity has been reached. So whenever the carrying capacity is reached, the population will stabilize. It'll stop going up. And they call that the S-shaped curve, or the S curve, because it kind of looks like an S. And you have what's called, so right here, this would be called the lag phase, when it's growing really slow. Then when it's growing really, really fast, that's called the exponential phase. Exponential growth, exponential phase, and then when the carrying capacity has been reached, the population will stabilize. And that's why this is called the stabilization phase. Now, will you need to know that? Yes. It'll probably be a written question on your test. It'll probably say, hey, draw a logistic curve. And you're going to want to draw the lag phase, the exponential phase, and then the stabilization phase when the carrying capacity has been reached, when that environment cannot carry any more individuals. All right, last slide, and this is just what we did last time. So the three parts of a logistic or S curve. Remember, we have the lag phase. That's where the growth is pretty slow. Then when the growth really starts to take off, that's the exponential phase. And then when the carrying capacity has been reached, when the environment cannot support any more individuals, you get the stabilization phase, and the population starts to level off. All right, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time.